But first, a whole host of royals were off to the races this week for Royal Ascot, with King Charles and Queen Camilla kicking off the occasion in style with a carriage procession. And Katie, we know that for a long time Camilla has been a big fan of horse racing, but it looks like Charles is coming round to the idea of it too, much like his late mother.
I think so. I mean, I know that the late Queen was always absolutely delighted that Camilla had this passion for racing, for horse races, you know, had interest in horses, and was therefore going to continue that love. I mean, for the late Queen, Royal Ascot was always one of the first events to go into her diary. You know, and she would also entertain at Windsor Castle. There were big lunches before the races. I mean, it was a really important week for her. And I think people did wonder when Charles became king whether that tradition was something that he was going to honour and continue. And thankfully he has, because I used to present the carriage procession for ITV Racing, and you know, the crowds when that carriage procession comes out, I mean, of course it's all about the horses and the racing, it's Ascot, but it's about the hats, and it's about the fashion and the dresses, and it's about the royals. I mean, a Royal Ascot without the King and Queen in the carriage just wouldn't feel like Royal Ascot. So it's been a great Royal Ascot so far. The sun's been out, which always makes a difference. We had the Prince of Wales earlier in the week, not the Princess of Wales, and there was a lot of speculation as to why she wasn't there, because her name had been printed on the carriage list, and as someone that was always given that list early because I was commentating on it, usually these things are double-checked with the palace, but on this occasion I think her name was printed when it hadn't been confirmed, and as we know, because of her own health journey and her pacing her return to public life, things do change at the 11th hour.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, it had been a busy week with the Garter and trooping for the princess. Perhaps she just decided actually it was too hot. It was a very, very hot day, and she wanted to be there when the children came back. So a lot was read into that, but I think the most important thing is that the King and the Queen were there. And as you say, Camilla has continued this love of racing.
Absolutely. I mean, we talk about the late Queen's love of horse racing. It was one of the few times we actually saw her run. Which was to get
the Derby.
The Derby. Get her binoculars on. How's my horse doing?
Yeah, she'd always let her guard down in the Royal Box, whether it's Ascot or the Derby. It was a moment. Look, this is my sport. You know, I'm just going to enjoy myself. But it's Katie said right about the Royal Procession. It's actually the 200th anniversary of the Royal Procession this year. It's been going that long, and it's so central to the kind of magic of the event. For lots of people, it's actually the highlight of the day.
Yeah.
And it rotates every day, because the King and the Queen, they still have these lunch parties up at Windsor Castle, and then they all travel down in cars, and they go halfway through the Great Park, and then they switch to the carriages, and then arrive in these carriages, and everybody always loves seeing who's in it. But I noticed that the Queen's love of literature is creeping in, as well as her love of horses. So, for example, this week in the carriage procession, we've seen Anthony Horowitz,
yes.
We've seen William Boyd, we've seen the novelist Robert Harris in there as well. So, you know, there's a bit of that. As you get to see, you know, who's sort of what are the interests. You know, the late Queen.
Who's on the inner circle?
Late Queen was always people from all over racing, and they still have you know, important people from racing. But no, you're absolutely right. I mean, the Queen has really got the King. He's caught the racing bug.
Good.
And if you saw him get his first winner in the same year as the coronation, I mean, he was almost, you could sort of see the eyes welling up. It was a huge moment for him. So get him a winner early and he's hooked.
Yeah. Also, Russ, this is a bit of a family occasion, isn't it? This is a chance for the King and Queen to get as many of their nearest and dearest together and block it out in the calendar. And it looks, you know, as much as we are looking in on what looks like a family get-together, it actually is.
Yeah, I mean, as Robert said, it's a chance for them to let their hair down. I mean, that's kind of why I was surprised that the Princess of Wales didn't go, because out of everything that's happened over the last week, of course, we had her at the V&A, then she was at Trooping, Garter Day as well. This is probably the one where you get to have a bit of fun with the family. It's also the anniversary of the carriage procession as well. So it was unfortunate that she wasn't there, because it's a great fun day. I mean, the weather's been kind. You know, Charles looking like he's enjoying himself. I don't think he's had a winner yet, has he?
He had a winner in 23. But
Yeah, this year.
No,
Yeah, he had one of the favourites. But I mean, it's a great occasion. The festival is always great fun.
But with regards to the Princess of Wales, I think, you know, she made it abundantly clear that she'll do as much as she can when she can.
Yeah.
Well, without explanation about why she's dropping out of things, because she's going to have to prioritise her health. And Katie, you've had your own experiences of dealing with cancer and cancer treatment,
Yeah.
so you can empathise entirely.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. And, you know, the princess herself has said, you know, when she was going through the treatment, there were good days and there were bad days.
Yeah.
And I was really struck at Trooping this year, seeing her looking so incredible in that aquamarine Catherine Walker dress, and thinking back to the year before where she looked so thin, so fragile. She was clearly going through that treatment, and it must have taken every inch of tenacity and determination, you know, and commitment to the king, because she wanted to be up there on that palace balcony a year ago. And you think, look how much can change in a year. And, you know, I was really careful in my reporting of that, because obviously I have a personal experience now. I can really empathise with her. And, you know, if it was just that she didn't want to go, it was too hot, she wanted to be there for the children to come back. She had been very much on display the week leading up to that.
But also, surely you sit and you look at your diary and go, OK, I've got all of these other commitments.
I need to pace
that are reliant
myself.
on
Pace yourself.
But these commitments are reliant on just me being there.
Yes.
This is something I can drop out of
Absolutely.
because the rest of the family are in attendance.
And I
And
think
also,
that,
we got coming up, I mean, you know, we're just days away from Wimbledon, where she's very much so,
Yes.
because of her important role within the Lawn Tennis Association. So that's a moment where I think she'll probably be feeling, if I'm going to sort of conserve my energies, it ought to be something where I play a key role. Ascot, it's sort of, you know, take it or leave it. I mean, you know, over the years, you know, some members of the royal family occasionally did drop out at the last minute.
they did, and you know, I don't know if this is a controversial thing to say or not, but I was told that it was the Queen's favourite event, but it wasn't necessarily Catherine's. I don't know how much she loves it. And when you look at Prince William as well, I mean, I think he usually pops up once in that week. They could go more if they really loved it and they really wanted to. So I think it's probably a case of certainly her prioritising her health, her time, her visibility. Centre Court is going to be more important than perhaps being at Ascot. So,
and supporting all of the other causes that she'd already given commitments to.
absolutely. And I think when you consider this year, when it wasn't guaranteed that we were going to see her as much as we have, there have been quite a lot of joint engagements. There have been 2 trips to Scotland, solo engagements.
And that was pretty busy. Mull was pretty hectic.
I think she's been remarkable in her return to work. I think she's done an incredible job.
It probably does prove that you've got to pace yourself, both, I suppose, us, the public, expecting more of her and herself. I mean, you know,
but she has said, and she said, you know, I'm going to, if I drop out of things, I think what we learn as a media is stop drilling for answers to questions.
And don't expect
answered.
too much. I mean, the palace have been very, very clear about it's going to be a staggered return, and you know, that proof is in the pudding.
Now, whilst Catherine wasn't at the races, she was, as Katie said, at one of the most important dates in the royal calendar, the King's official birthday, Trooping the Colour. And Robert, you were there. The sun was out.
Yeah, it was great.
And, well, was it business as usual?
Yeah, there was a real sense of a reset, I think, because last year there was a sort of underlying tension. Everyone was delighted to see the king, everyone was delighted to see the princess, but everyone was also very conscious of the fact that both of them were undergoing treatment, and that kind of dominated the whole thing. This year, you almost had to remind yourself that both of them had been, you know, through all this. It sort of ran like clockwork. I mean, I think particularly in sort of difficult, bleak times when people feel worried about all sorts of things, there is something very reassuring. What struck me particularly about it actually was where we were on our sort of media gantry by Canada Gate. The number of international TV stations and networks who were covering it live. There was a huge setup from Germany and next to one from Italy. And I said to them both, you know, why are you here? You're not normally here. And they just said, it's such a miserable time at the moment that we like things that don't change. We like things that sort of make our viewers smile. I mean, this is an international event. It's not just a British event. I think
that's really interesting.
It is. It's just a sort of, you know, in a very uncertain world, there's that sort of sense of, well, as long as he's still on his balcony with the royal family, you know, it's okay.
Well, not quite the full balcony scenes that we were entertained with under his mother's reign. I mean, he really has kept to his word, hasn't he? It's working royals only.
Well, it's diminishing year by year. I mean, it seems like that. You look at some of the previous images. I was looking at some of our coverage from back in 2015. Absolutely bolstered. But I think this is in tune with what the king wants. So the depiction of the royal family needs to be slimmed down, and as Robert said, you keep those traditional elements, but there's a lot going on in the world, so it probably helps the image of the royal family having a smaller posse at the top of the balcony.
And of course, we can always rely on little Louis to brighten and lighten the occasion, and he didn't disappoint, as always.
Pretty well behaved.
He was.
Yes, I think he was on very good form.
He was.
It's change of roles, because it was George this time sort of poking him and saying, "You stop waving," and of course Charlotte was doing that to George so ago. So
It's impossible, I think, to look at Prince Louis and not see Michael Middleton.
Totally.
It's just an unbelievable resemblance, and he is a bit of a scene stealer, isn't he, up on that balcony, whether it's because he doesn't like the noise or he's doing his little windscreen wiper wave or his little jig, and then that final look back out at the crowds. But
also, he works with the crowds, because he was doing a wave and people were woo, and then he's like, ooh.
Are they cheering for me?
Yes, exactly.
But it's a reminder that it's fundamentally it's a family event. Yes, it's a great military parade. But it's something that, the King first went to this thing when he was age 3. He's probably seen more troopings than anybody alive.
Very good point.
But he first started riding on a horse 50 years ago in this event. I mean, he's now stopped. The last couple of years, he's got in a carriage.
Who was on horseback this year?
No,
Robert?
he decided. The king decided, I'm going to go in a carriage. He rode in the first year of his reign. I think he wanted to do that. I wanted to be on parade as a monarch, but they stuck him. I don't know whose idea it was. They put him on a very frisky Canadian mare called Noble, who was a fairly new arrival. Who was a real handful, and I mean, he was having to sort of spend most of the parade trying to keep naughty Noble. And I think the following year, partly on Doctor's orders, probably on the Queen's orders, the Queen Camilla's orders, he was in a carriage as his late mother used to do in her later years, and he was in the carriage again this year, and on Naughty Noble was the Princess Royal, because
is that Naughty Noble there?
If anyone is going to keep a difficult horse under control, it's probably the family's resident Olympian horse expert, and she did.
Yeah, and unafraid to get back in the saddle after her accident.
So you had the three royal colonels on horseback. You got the Prince of Wales, Duke of Edinburgh, and the Princess Royal, all riding behind. And the King, I mean, he used to love riding in this parade, but when you're getting into your late 70s, it's probably time to literally sort of take.
No pun intended. Rein it in.
Rein it in.
Also, on this occasion, the palace were very quick to pay their respects to those who had lost loved ones and lost their lives in the air disaster that happened around the same time in India. Were you surprised?
No, we heard on the I think the day before that the King, it was very much his idea that they were going to recognise this appalling disaster of Air India Flight 171. More than 50 British citizens killed in that. But also, the King is very conscious, he's head of the Commonwealth. This was a huge disaster for the largest Commonwealth nation, India. I mean, birthday, parade day, all the Commonwealth flags, line, horse guards. And I think it was very much a sense of, this is something we can't just ignore. We're in a very dignified way. We're going to acknowledge it, so that the male members, the members of the family wearing uniform had black armbands.
Absolutely.
And there was a minute's silence. But the late Queen was wise to that as well. I remember 8 years ago commentating on the birthday parade, and it was very shortly after the Grenfell fire disaster. And she said, we absolutely have to acknowledge this. This is a parade, it is a celebration, but we can't just pretend that this terrible thing hasn't happened. So there was a minute's silence for Grenfell back then. So, it's part of that royal, it's that sort of gentle, understated, but, gestures matter in monarchy.
Public mood.
It was, I thought it was sort of pitch perfect, really. It said what it needed to say.
There is some discussion that going forward we might not have 2 birthdays for future monarchs, because we don't. The reason we do trooping now is because of the weather at this time of year.
Always is the second Saturday in
the King's
June.
birthday is actually
November,
yeah.
Yes.
But William and George both have summer birthdays, so will there be a trooping still, do you think? Will they honour the tradition?
Yes.
Listen, it's 280 years old.
You're not going to change a tradition.
Will
like
they do
that.
double birthdays though, or will we see trooping on their actual birthdays?
Well,
I think
don't think you'd.
I think you've got. You need
it's
to be
so
able to
close
plan.
for him. I don't think you'd change it.
I think you've got you've got to plan everything. The other thing to remember is Britain is the only country in the world, actually, apart from Denmark, that doesn't have a national day. Every other country, America has July the 4th, France has the 14th of July. We have our home nations have St George's Day, St Andrew's Day, whatever. There's no UK British National Day, and so in all the embassies and high commissions and everywhere around the world, every sort of official British event, it's our national day.
Right.
So there's a Queen's or a King's birthday party on the High Commissioner's lawn in Delhi or in the Washington or whatever. So it actually it's much bigger than just a military parade. And I think, you know, as we know how much tradition matters to the family. I don't think I'm sure Prince William, when he's King William, he'll want to tweak all sorts of things. But I don't think you tinker with this. And the other thing is there is a tradition. There are only 2 days of the year when the monarch is spared a red box, and one is Christmas Day and the other's the birthday. So why would he want an extra day's work?
Do you think you could have a sort of a pared down trooping? I mean, it's quite formulaic, but I think William will make changes to the coronation, as we well know, and this could be another one where he slightly adapts it because of I think he's quite aware of the perception of these sort of grand celebrations.
The pageantry.
Yeah, you don't want to lose it too much. Of course.
I think, but sometimes there is purpose to pageantry.
Appeal of it is
the armed forces love it. I mean,
Yeah.
I think the opposition to that would come from the soldiers.
from them themselves.
Yeah.
I think the balcony appearance might look different because we were just saying, weren't we, how that looks so different today under Charles's reign compared to Elizabeth's, and I think under William's reign it will look even more slimmed down. I think it's really going to be just.
Yeah, you
just
could almost
them.
imagine them being in the garden and inviting, lots of people from the charities, like a garden party.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Yeah, I mean, 20 years ago, the late Queen loved having all the cousins, her cousins' cousins, and it did look like almost like a sort of wedding scene on the balcony, and that's how she liked it. And some of her advisors were very conscious of the fact that it did send out message that there's somehow this sort of vast family living off sort of off this sort of royal
public
way.
purse,
And which was completely wrong, but that was the depiction. And occasionally people would try and say to her, "Ma'am, do you think we might shorten it?" And it was like flat no. They're my family. It's my birthday. I'll do what I like. But I think that's how the King likes it. So yeah, it's just the working family. And there are plenty of lots of members of the family who he loves. Zara and Peter Phillips and the Princess of York. He's very close to them. But it's like they're not part of what the monarchy is about. They're part of my family, but they're not part of the institution. So it's not their day.